Welcome everyone to another edition of the EOS Fireside Chat. I'm your host Stephane, and we've got a good show for you planned today. Shout out to everyone listening in on the various platforms. We're on Discord live. If you want to join in, share your thoughts, share your questions, participate in the open mic, join us on Discord. But you can also watch from Telegram, from Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook as well. All right, so this week we've got a few topics planned for you guys, of course, and as always welcome you guys to jump in with some new topics or otherwise questions or comments, of course. So we'll be talking about some Pomelo NFTs today. We'll be talking about Recover Plus. We mentioned it last week, but it was pretty fresh. Wondering maybe this week some of you might have had time to read the blue paper, so we'll talk about that a bit. If Chris Barnes joins us, we'll be getting some hackathon updates and some of the news that came out this week. Just earlier today, we learned about Bithum offering some staking rewards. We'll talk about that. Yves had some great tweets again this week. I'll be mentioning some of my favorites, and of course the Vitalik comment earlier on that created quite a stir in both the Ethereum and EOS communities. So these are some of the topics we'll be chatting today. But before we get into that, wanted to remind you guys this is the last week to get your raffle tickets for the end of the month raffle. So these raffles go down on the first Wednesday of the month, so that's going to be next week on July 6th. And until then, you can go to blend.gems.io and blend 4 pop tokens into the raffle ticket. We're going to have 25 prizes worth 10 EOS each at least, and maybe some extra goodies as well. All right, I see we've got a lot of new faces that have joined the stream in the last few minutes. Welcome, everyone. We've got Dwayne Gunfloska, John at Boyd, Brandon Lovejoy, Matej, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Trimbot, The Legend, Yarrow, welcome guys, thanks for joining. And yeah, so let's get it started with some Pomelo NFT talk. So earlier this week on Tuesday or yesterday, the Grand Collectible Packs went live for sale. So you can go to harvest.pomelo.io for all your Pomelo NFT needs. I'm going to share that link real quickly in the stream chat. Here we go. You can buy your packs for Grand Collectibles. Oh, we've got some people coming in. Bywire, I'm going to have to give you a little server mute. But thanks for joining. Yeah, so the Grand Collectible packs are on sale. They're going fairly quickly. There's 525 available on sale through Atomic Hub and through our harvest.pomelo platform. And there's 300 left, so almost half of them sold. You can also go to shop.pomelo.io and buy some either carbon NFTs or Grand Collectible packs via Shopify with your credit cards, and then you get a claim link, and then you can go claim your NFTs. So if you haven't tried that out yet, we encourage you to try out the Shopify integration. It's still, in beta, we could say, but we're looking for people to try it out to see how it works, to see the whole transaction flow. And if you have comments, concerns, something is buggy or whatever, of course, let us know and try it out. And in order to, incentivize you guys a bit to go out there on Shopify and use some dirty fiat to buy these pristine Pomelo NFTs, there's a little slight discount as well on the Shopify platform. So take a look. Denis, I can see here, Denis shared the link in the stream chat. That's awesome. We've got Yves Larose in the house joining us today as well. NS James just joined as well. Welcome, guys. And Alicia as well. Also, yesterday or this morning, we shared a new article that we published on the Pomelo Medium account that kind of explains the NFT series so far this season. So I'm going to share that link for you guys in the stream chat as well. And so you can see there, you can see kind of the NFTs that are available. You can see an infographic that kind of describes the season so far. And we'll be updating that page again in a bit when we do the final reveal for the full season. Zane in the stream chat asks, when blend? That's right. So next week, next Tuesday, the blend goes live. So in order to continue on the NFT adventure, you'll need 4 carbons and 1 grand collectible that you're going to blend together, create a rocket potion, start generating some rockets for the second part of this adventure. And those of you who want to maybe win a free Pomelo Grand Collectible Pack, head on over to Twitter to the Pomelo account, where there's a little giveaway contest going on. So I'm going to share the link to that tweet as well. And this contest goes on for another about 12 hours. So I'm going to be closing this contest tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. And we're giving away 10 packs for some retweets, some likes, some retweets, some follows, and some tags. So again, you can check out the link here in the stream chat if you want to go give that post a like and retweet. We appreciate it, and hopefully you win a pack out of it. All right, final piece of Pomelo NFT update is that the Pomelo achievements are now live. So we've been distributing some non-transferable tokens, non-transferable NFTs that represent the top donors and top grants from both season 1 and season 2. So top 100 donors received an NFT, with the top 25 receiving a crown on their achievement NFT, and then same thing goes for the top 10 and top 50 grant creators from each season. So the donors are ranked according to their total donations in EOS, and the grant creators are ranked according to the amount of matching funds that they were able to earn. And so you can go check out your accounts. If you qualified for these achievements, the NFT is going to be in your account, and that mint number that you'll see on your NFT actually corresponds to your ranking in the top 100. So check that out. And also holders of these achievement badges are going to be those who we reward with airdrops and bonuses and other gifts like that. All right, so that covers kind of the introduction and what I wanted to talk about with Pomelo. If anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to jump on. I'm going to give you guys a bit of music, and then we'll continue on with the show. All right, so Recover Plus white paper. Last week we mentioned it briefly, but it was kind of fresh off the press. Maybe not many people had time to read it. So I'm wondering if some of you have had time to read it now, and if some of you have some thoughts, some comments, some questions, general feeling that you'd like to share. And in order to incentivize you guys to share, I'll be giving out 1 bonus pop token for everyone who jumps on here in this topic and shares their ideas, thoughts, whatever it is. Yeah, we'd like to hear from you guys. I see Zack is in the chat.
I'll break the ice, I guess. Just to say that I think we mentioned last week that there was a possibility of me attending the Upbit Developer Conference in September in South Korea. And on the topic of Recover Plus, the idea that we submitted to deliver a keynote is to talk about Recover Plus. So if you have any questions about it, if you're not going to ask today, then maybe you'll be able to listen in September and hear about Recover Plus at that time.
Lovely. All right. So, Recover Plus. Let's hear some thoughts from the crowd. No, nobody. Side note: we finally got the video chat to work on Telegram. So in the EOS Network Foundation, we're restreaming live to there as well. So we finally got that to work. Thank you to Zack and Yana for troubleshooting that.
So what all platforms are we on now?
So we're on Discord, of course, for everyone who wants to either chat with their mic or on the stream chat by text. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, and yeah, that covers it for now.
YouTube too.
YouTube too, of course, yeah. Absolutely.
Trimbot here, just jumping in real quick about Recover Plus. Question for Yves or Zack. I haven't read through it yet. So Yves has said it's like insurance, the insurance layer of DeFi, DeFi 3.0 on EOS. What exactly is Recover Plus though, and how will that, if at all, impact some calls where some people say, EOS is more centralized than other chains? So how do we sort of combat the centralization argument with Recover Plus? And this is coming from a position of ignorance as someone who's not read Recover Plus.
Because this would be an opt-in program. And so if you're running a DeFi application on EOS and you'd like to opt in to Recover Plus, essentially, then there's going to be a process. So you need to apply for it. There's going to be a committee that's going to be reviewing. You're going to need to go through steps in order to qualify for that. What that does, though, and this whole process is transparent. There's a website. It's already there. I believe it's EOS Recover or EOSRecover.com. Zack, help me out here.
EOSRecover.com.
And so centralization, or the spectrum of centralization, is somewhat irrelevant in this, because the people participating in those programs would have asked for that. And that is the, I guess, secondary layer to this, is the fact that people would opt in to this program. So that should an event occur, Recover Plus doesn't prevent any type of hack from happening, but it does all of the work beforehand, and it has the foundations laid beforehand, so that should something happen, the network and those running the Recover Plus program already have all of the information ready to potentially stop a hack while it's in progress. So we saw that on 2 occasions on EOS where hacks occurred and the applications were not ready. They didn't have the information in line, but that the block producers indicated that they were willing to help and willing to stop. And in both instances, they were able to prevent loss of funds. The idea from Recover Plus is to really open that up to everybody and anybody who wishes to participate in this program, so that if something happens, then it doesn't mean that it would be safe, but it increases the likelihood that something could be done.
Well, I have a question too. I understand because of this that projects need to apply for Recover Plus in order to be able to be to get eligible for a recovery in case something happens. Now, what would happen if something like one of those instances, like the ones we saw for like in the last Vaults hack? What if something like that happened to a project that has not applied to Recover Plus?
Now that Recover Plus would be live, I can't answer what would happen if they, I can't predict the future. What I can say is, if there's a project that wishes to potentially benefit from that program, they should be applying. I'll try to answer in a different way. There was another hack that happened back in December, and that was the DAD eCurve pizza. Basically, it was leveraging a few platforms. And part of the problem with trying to stop the hack in progress was that the metrics that were needed in order to actually do something about it, all of those were shut down when the project realized that it was being hacked. And so it closed down all of its smart contracts, and all of the information that then the chain needed or the block producers needed in order to make a determination wasn't accessible. And the hackers obviously are getting more and more sophisticated. And so the hacker in that instance created a cascading script that created 1.5 million accounts on EOS within a very, very short period of time. And to put that in perspective, there were only 3 million accounts on EOS at that time. And so the hacker literally created about 50% of all EOS accounts in existence within the matter of 24 hours or something like that. In order to be able to prevent that, or in order to be able to do something about it, a lot of technical components were required. A lot of the information that can already be gathered prior to a hack occurring could have been put and filed and essentially been on record. We also don't know whether or not in those instances the project itself is part of it. Like, is this an internal hack? Is this a rug pull? Having a lot of that information prior to makes it much easier to ascertain, or for the block producers to be able to ascertain whether or not they should, utilize the features that are embedded in EOS in order to be able to prevent something like this from happening. In the instances of the Vault hack and in the instance of eCurve, DAD/PITA, those were all known players. The determination as to whether or not this was a scam, rug pull, or whether or not it was a hack, aligned with all of the information was being present. The smart contracts were open, they were audited, et cetera, in one of the instances, really cleared out a lot of that information. But that may not be the case in the future, which is why Recover Plus was created, so that any other application in the future who would want to benefit from that potential saving would increase its likelihood of it happening, because it could start gathering that information prior to, start giving the network the assurances that it needs and the block producers the assurance that it needs to make that determination. Just more information accessible so that the block producers are in a better position to make those calls. Certain things like technical capabilities as well were rarely talked about when we talked about the Vault hack or the DAD eCurve hack. So a lot of times people will say, well, that's because those folks were privileged. In a case, that's true. Of course, the networking clearly helped. The fact that in our case with the Vault, and the fact that we could reach out to block producers and get them to look at this was a key component of this. But it was not the sole component at all. The fact that we had a lot of the data accumulated and could showcase that this was in fact was clearly a key component. Another really, really important aspect of other applications saying, well, why couldn't I be saved, in the past and such? Well, the technical requirements to be able to do something about it are incredibly difficult. The skill set required to be able to do something are extremely hard. There are only a few individuals on EOS that can actually write the smart contracts and the codes and deploy the script to even do something about it. It's not like anybody could do something. It's extremely difficult. You need to understand how EOSIO operates. Like I just mentioned, a 1.5 million accounts being created in a 24-hour span. In order to stop that, in order to predict when that will end, in order to be able to do a counter script that would be able to know when that script is going to end, so that you can actually at the right time intercept that account or that account creation or the movement of funds, it is extremely technically challenging. And so having those people essentially through Recover Plus now on retainer in a way, through a committee, having the right skill sets, being on call, having, for those who've read the Recover Plus paper, having a kind of like an emergency drill, just like an emergency fire drill once per month type of thing. Well, having an emergency fire drill Recover Plus on a monthly basis, so that that skill set can be honed, can be refined, so that the portal can get better, so that more information can be accumulated, better information, better metrics. All of that you didn't see through the Vault hack and you didn't see through the DAD hack because it occurred and because it happened to prominent members of the community. How do we decentralize that? How do we open that up to people who don't necessarily have that luxury? That's what Recover Plus aims to address. So it is very much opt-in, and the applications, it does not remove the requirements on the applications to be vigilant, to go through, for example, auditing processes, to open source their code, to null potentially their keys. There are a lot of things that people can do to mitigate those risks. And that's also what Recover Plus is going to be helping with, is to help guide those applications on best practices of what they can do to mitigate and to minimize the chances of that happening. But in the unfortunate event that that happens, because it will happen again, it's just a question of time. In the unfortunate event that happens, then to have a framework and a system in place to potentially be able to stop that is what Recover Plus aims to do, but is very much opt-in. And so this idea of decentralization, centralization, this would be what essentially the people would be giving the green light before time. They would be giving the okay prior to that. And that is in the form of what the requirements for Recover Plus is, and the information that's being accumulated from those parties, the KYC that they'll need to go through, et cetera, et cetera.
I've got a quick question regarding Recover Plus.
Yeah, go.
So this is Andrew Drew Block. I am just curious. Does Recover Plus incorporate any Ricardian contract considerations? Does it use Ricardian contracts in any way to establish the intent of what a given piece of code is supposed to do? Anything like that?
No, the Recover Plus is not aiming to address the Ricardian contracts. However, if you've read the Wallet Plus blue paper, Ricardian contracts is one of those priorities that's been laid out in that paper. So Recover Plus would be able to come in and leverage the Ricardian contracts should they be present, but updating the system of Ricardian contracts is not in the scope of Recover Plus.
Okay, cool.
But oftentimes it is quite black and white in terms of whether or not the code behaved as was intended. And so this is also part of the Recover Plus program, is to go through with those teams to find out what is the intent of the application, what type of DeFi are you offering. And so there's somewhat of an auditing function into that as well. But yes, definitely, if our system of Ricardian contracts on EOS was upgraded, as was suggested by Aaron and the others who wrote Wallet Plus, that would come as a benefit. Ricardian contracts, one of the challenges, and actually this has been a discussion in the EOSIO developers chat lately, is that there's still workarounds, or there's still ways that people can kind of game the Ricardian contract. At the end of the day, the end user still has to do due diligence. And as much as the UI can facilitate that process, and there could be ways to really try and mitigate that, the final showstopper, the final filter is the end user. And so increasing that education, facilitating for the end user is clearly important, but scams will continue happening. And when we talk about Recover Plus, we're not talking about phishing scams. That is not in scope. We're really talking about smart contracts that were literally black or white hacked because there was a vulnerability found in the code, and it opens the door to an event which typically will result in financial loss. So this is not the same as you clicking on a link and giving away your private keys. Unfortunately, that is not in the scope of Recover Plus. It's not to say that that could not be something that they could do or that somebody else attempts to do in the future, but it is not currently in scope.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
And that issue in terms of phishing scam, that exists outside of blockchain as well. Receiving an email asking you to click on this link and give your banking information, your social insurance number, or receiving a phone call telling you that the IRS or the CRA or wherever you are in the world is going to sue you unless you give them $10,000 right now. As much as you try to prevent those, it's kind of a game of a whack-a-mole. You stop one and another one pops up. User vigilance at the end of the day really is the only deterrent to all of this.
Wait, you mean those calls aren't real? Hold on.
Well, when they call you, Chris, they are real. And so I would recommend that you give your social insurance number and you send that transaction. Otherwise, you do know that they're going to be coming knocking on your door, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. It's so terrible.
Question: Is it going to address or study non-accounts and contracts that we know that are very well known for being scams? Like, for example, there is a huge account that we know that it's been scamming people for a long time, or a contract that we know that it's been doing the same for a while. Is it going to address or study those cases?
So Recover Plus is not about phishing scams. It is about applications that deploy smart contracts, and those smart contracts get taken advantage of due to an oversight in writing code, or oftentimes really complex hacks that are just pioneered. I mean, that as well is a game of whack-a-mole. You could be really, really good at writing code, but if you've got incentive for somebody to try and break that code, we've seen that it happens repeatedly. The latest number that we posted was that 1.6 or 1.7 billion dollars worth of hacks have occurred thus far. So we're not talking about accounts that have phished people. That is not in scope.
I think that previous talker was talking about B1's account, somebody that scammed people.
Please rephrase because I'm not sure what you're asking.
It's another case of whack-a-mole. So I'm assuming it's one of the phishing sites that has you swap your keys.
That's phishing. We're not talking about phishing.
Exactly. And I'm just saying it's like whack-a-mole, because even if you froze that contract, nulled its keys, whatever, they could just deploy another smart contract that switches your keys and then use that on the same front end of the website, and it does the exact same thing. It's another case of whack-a-mole. Like they could just keep deploying a new contract. So it's out of scope.
I actually got a quick question, a couple of them actually. This is Tony Licavulli here. For Recover Plus, and a couple of I can't see the guys. Gonfloska, that kind of ties into one of my questions of, so the Recover Plus role is going to be primarily reactionary and not preventative, right? I mean, that seems to be the case. Or is there going to be any sort of like, are you guys going to be looking into potential things or investigating, obviously, again, not phishing scams or anything like that, but for some of these larger, looking for trends in data, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you are correct that Recover Plus is predominantly an after the fact. So it is reactionary, but it is preventative, because the data that is being accumulated prior to makes it so that if something occurs, you're better positioned to react. And so it is preventative in that sense. It's also preventative because while going through the process, I don't want to call it an audit, but in order to be eligible to participate in it, there is a filtration mechanism that occurs. And so, yes, there is a look at the contracts, a look at the teams that are applying and stuff. And so in that sense, it is also preventative. Now, if you're a user and you are going to be interacting with a DeFi application on EOS, this is not financial advice. If there is a project that is or has joined Recover Plus and they get that badge, that shield, it is not to say that it is a safer application or that nothing will happen, but it does give more trust or confidence in that project. So in that sense, it's also somewhat preventative. So if you're a user and you are looking at participating in one of the DeFi applications, I would see that there'd likely be a trend that users will perhaps migrate to projects that have been approved by Recover Plus more so. And so we may prevent hacks from occurring because those that don't participate in Recover Plus may be at a higher target or a higher risk.
It seems like almost like an alarm system, right? You get an alarm system installed on your home. People are gonna, they're gonna come install it. They're gonna check your home, look for any weak points, look for any potential vulnerabilities, and then you get the big sign out front that says that this house is protected by an alarm system.
So they may go to rob your neighbor's house instead.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to. Again, having an alarm system does not mean that your house will not be
correct.
Victim correct. And so I really don't want the the community to get the impression that this prevents hacks from happening or that it guarantees that the funds would be recovered. That is not the case. It's simply trying to increase the likelihood and mitigate the risks, and really open up and democratize what we did see happen on 2 occasions through, for example, the Vault and then subsequently eCurve and DAD.
So you bring up, actually, it leads into one of my other questions. When something occurs, will it kind of fall under the Recover Plus team's purview to, basically report about that, give any sort of metrics or any timeline, or is there any sort of alerting when we're in progress?
That's a very good question. So one of the things that we saw in the previous attempts is that people want to have information. They want they want people to communicate. Part of the downside or part of the reality is while a hack is in progress, the team being hacked cannot communicate because any information that is given to the public potentially is also given or is given to the hacker. And so you need to be very guarded in how you communicate, in what you communicate. Recover Plus would fulfill that role or help fulfill that role of what should you say, what shouldn't you say. It will also help fulfill the role of essentially negotiator between potentially the hacker and the application project, because that's a particular skill set that not necessarily everybody has. And so that communications layer, that in between is very much what the Recover Plus committee would do. And that Recover Plus committee, if you read the blue paper, the proposal is that is formed of various community members. For example, a few block producers, a few DeFi projects that we know are clearly not, that are real DeFi projects. Eden, chief delegates perhaps would have a seat on that committee, so that when that committee then acts as the intermediary between the application and the block producers, that committee is formed of multiple different types of stakeholders, that it increases the likelihood, one, that the block producers listen, and because they have access to them, they have contact to them, and they know that this is their role. It increases the likelihood that the block producers can actually intervene, that they have the information that they need to be able to intervene, because that's another issue in the past is applications, despite them being able to deploy a project, don't necessarily have either the technical capacity, like I mentioned earlier, or the data to be able to showcase, yes, this is an actual hack. This is not a rug pull by us. So what is that information? What is required? That's when Recover Plus gathers and accumulates for those applications. How to approach, what to say. A good example as well is in the eCurve DAD hack, the block producers noticed the hack faster than the application itself. So the block producers were already on a call, already trying to figure out what was going on and to stop the occurring hack before eCurve DAD, the project itself, even knew it was happening. Because the block producers have monitoring systems in place, and they noticed the trigger in this case was the enormous amount of EOS accounts being created in a very short period of time. So the alarm bells rang at the block producers before it even rang at the application. The application woke up and basically their funds were drained. It was already too late. So triggers like that, as an example, will be part of the monitoring of what the Recover Plus team can do. And that's just one example.
No, I appreciate that.
So
in depth.
There's some other preventative things also. So it's kind of like an insurance company. Like your insurance company always sends you advice on ways to get healthy, go see a doctor, checkup. So part of what's proposed in Recover Plus is a bug bounty program for white hat hackers. So basically an incentive program for people who are good hackers and want to find these vulnerabilities in different smart contracts. They could be rewarded to do so. So rather than being incentivized to earn their profits by draining the funds and watching over their back from that point on, there will be a program to submit bugs and vulnerabilities to everyone's benefit, because maybe they find something that could potentially exploit multiple contracts. So it's basically enhancing best practices, creating best practices for DeFi. So another example is the monitoring tools that Yves mentioned. So maybe there could be an open source monitoring tool that other projects could use or learn about. Best practices using the time delay functions that's native, that's built into EOSIO. So as bad as the eCurve pizza is eCurve that got exploited. Pizza was like collateral damage. But one of the things that eCurve did well, aside from all the things they did bad, was in their bridge, their cross-chain bridge to Ethereum, they had like a daily limit. So only I think $250,000 of stable coins were able to cross that bridge before it shut off. So potentially a best practice, for example, could be setting a time delay after a certain amount of capital moves from wallet to wallet. And outlining what those best practices are, because time is of the essence. So with the fire drills that are going to be happening every single month, it'll be like iron sharpening iron, so that the Recover Plus DAO or working group will be very fast to act in the case of an exploit. But as we all know, like EOS is very fast also. So you're always cat and mouse. The hackers could move funds faster than you can catch them and freeze tokens or freeze an account. So by incorporating like a time delay, for example, or in this case, if there were best practices documents created by Recover Plus to basically say, this is what we believe the best practices are, explain it, maybe provide some open source code, then it could be another layer to slow things down, so that even if there is an exploit, there might be a limit to how much capital could be drained in a particular day or a particular time period. Then you won't see things like the Axie bridge or the Ronin bridge being hacked for $100 million in a single day, or things like that you've seen from other ecosystems. You kind of could put a cap on the limit for a given day. So I think best practices, I think white hat hackers and a bug bounty program, and then also like it doesn't prevent things, but it kind of gives you a little bit of reassurance on like rug pulls and things like that, because you know that if a DeFi project submitted and got approved to the EOS Recover Plus, you know that one of their project founders went through a KYC process with Recover Plus. So there's someone to hold accountable, someone that probably has evidence if it wasn't them, that if it was an inside job, for instance, you can kind of have a starting point. Whereas if the project's completely anonymous, you kind of don't even have a trail to start following. So there's a lot of different things that like in themselves isn't going to be preventative all in itself, but collectively I think we'll see prevention with everything collectively with what I just said. And I think the best practices document, I don't even think it's been published yet, but part of the Recover Plus, he does have FAQ and best practices that will be on the portal also. So
I think
people
most importantly
developing. Yeah, go ahead.
I think most importantly for third-party developers is the fact that this exists, period, is a huge boon for their existence. So it makes it a lot easier to create applications when you know that this part of your stack, which is mandatory, is already being handled, and you can adapt to it instead of having to recreate it from scratch. I think that it's been something that's been missing for a long time from the EOSIO ecosystem and EOS primarily.
Keep in mind as well that Recover Plus is a new initiative, right? So what Recover Plus looks like today and what it will look like in a year hopefully will not be the same. This is something that EOS is pioneering. There's nowhere else out there that we know of that is doing something like this. And so the iteration of what the program or the initiative is ideally will continue improving over a period of time. And so it'll get stronger, it'll get better. So everything that I'm letting you know now is the theory of how this program will run, how it in fact runs, and how then we adapt, and how it will run in a year is left to be seen.
No, this is a fantastic project. I hope I'm not alluding to my thought that I think that's anything other than that. This is world class. I wouldn't expect this kind of expect this kind of care and support out of most enterprise software. So it's a great thing to see. The the last thing I was curious about, and I know this is probably pretty variable number to quote, but rough ballpark, what would be the time to engage, right? So from somebody reaching out and contacting you guys to say, hey, I'm interested in this, what do I need to do to, and I understand from what you're explaining, there's definitely going to be a couple meetings and a couple review processes, but is it something along the lines of, a couple weeks, couple months, a year, something along those lines? Just rough ballpark timeline.
So ENF doesn't run the program, right? So the appointed person that started this process or that was assigned this file to write the blue paper and then essentially create the portal, which is still underway, that is Francis, who routinely joins our calls and such, but Francis from Pizza. If you want to know, I would say the answer to your question, just to be very direct, as soon as possible. Reach out to Francis. He's been in the developer chats. He's been in the jungle chat as well, because they're starting to run the test and stuff. So reach out to him as early as possible. I don't think there's any harm in doing so. I believe that there's projects that have already applied and started going through the process. But the portal and the initiative, the program, the committee, all that is still underway. And so, insert yourself as early as possible in the process, learn about the process, and ideally come and help and improve the process as it's literally being crafted, right? So what you see in the blue paper is the idea. Now that idea has been put into motion as of a few months back with the portal, but then more so once that blue paper was released and shortly before that. And so it's still very much a work in progress. And so if you have an interest in this, reach out. I'm certain that Francis will appreciate walking you through what we already have and how potentially you can even come and improve and participate to make the system better.
Awesome. Will do. Thank you very much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, of course.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So will there be a limit on to how many applications can opt in for this? Obviously, how many you could cope with if there was a hack affecting thousands of users, for instance?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but users in an application, I guess that is somewhat an irrelevant piece of data. So whether there's 5 people in a DeFi application or 10,000, I would imagine that the same code would need to be written to potentially stop a hack from occurring. I guess I'm not really sure what the question is. Do you mean the number of applications that can participate in the program, or
that adapts itself?
That's a really good question. So I would say that there's no answer to that. At some point, it's inevitable that the amount of requests potentially will start to get bottlenecked, and then the committee and the people running the initiative and the program will need to make a determination as to whether or not they request for more funding, and then they need to gather the data to showcase that this is actually a return on investment for the network, that this is a value add to the network. And so I can't tell you what that number is because I don't know how many they'll be able to accommodate. And then once they hit that limit, do they just say, this is it done? I doubt it. The idea would be to be able to grow with the demand. But where that number lies at this stage, I've no idea.
I think if we had to sit down and start thinking about this problem, it'd be a really good problem to have, that we have so many projects starting up that we can't keep up with them.
Yeah, and these need to be legitimate projects as well, right? So we're not talking about somebody who just deploys a smart contract and then, it needs to have an actual project, an actual application. And so we are, very much like Zack is saying, the ceiling right now is nowhere near, I believe, the potential capacity that exists at this stage. Similar to Yield Plus, I think the question was asked last week as well, that the parameters are such that the design of the system will be able to accommodate and optimize for between 60 to 100 different applications. If we are at this stage, well, first of all, right now we've got nowhere near that number of applications, and so that's not a problem. And if we are there, well, that means that we now have a thriving developer community. We've got a thriving token holder community that's participating in this as well. and then it's the least of our worries. Now we need to continuously improve on the initiative, on the program, deploy capital, but we would ideally at that stage have the metrics to justify the increase in cost to run those programs.
Thank you. That sounds good. One other thing, I might have missed this, but
I'm sorry, Mel, you're cutting out. Your microphone, and I heard one more thing, and then I haven't heard anything since.
Okay, just asking if you can hear me. If the dev with a DAP, we've got a project they want to opt in for this service, they would, I assume, would pay a subscription service for this.
I think I understood the question, so let me rephrase, and just because your mic is cutting in and out, just answer with a yes or no. I think you asked whether or not, because this would bear a cost on the network, whether or not there's going to be a subscription or a cost to participate in this program.
That's correct. Yes.
At this stage, there's no cost to participate in this program. However, if you read the Recover Plus blue paper, there is mention of whether or not this initiative in the future could become very much so like an insurance layer. And so they have that section in there where applications would pay, and then it really would be an insurance layer perhaps, and there's only exploratory talk in that blue paper, but the idea that if this was highly successful and you actually had, just like an insurance in real life, have enough people that participate in this, that then the insurance layer would have enough funds to even cover a hack should it not be able to be stopped in time at a certain level or a certain percentage. But that is currently out of scope of what the Recover Plus portal and team are working on. But yes, that was mentioned. So I invite you to go look at the blue paper. It does talk about that. So to be clear again, at this stage, there is no cost. There's a cost to the network. There's no cost to the applications at this stage. And the cost of the network is obviously, running the program, setting up the program. We paid for the blue paper, for example. That's what I mean by cost to the network. So it is cost in R&D and development to explore this idea and to run it as a pilot project for a period of time. And all those costs are laid out in the blue paper. So you can go and see what I'm referring to.
Well, thanks for that great explanation, Yves, and thanks Trimbot, Gunflaska, Drewblock, Tony, Mark, and Mel for jumping in and joining the conversations. If you guys want your extra pop tokens, send me a message on Discord with your EOS account, and I'll drop that in your account later on today. Any other thoughts and comments about Recover Plus? It's been a good discussion so far. Anyone else want to jump in here and share something? Also, shout out to everyone in here. We're now over 60 people in the Fireside. So I think this is the first time since our New Year's special edition that we've had that. So it's great to see that you guys enjoy these Fireside chats, and more of you are joining. And that's not even counting everyone listening live on Telegram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. All right, looking at the chat here, I did notice a question about Pomelo collectibles from previous seasons and if they're still valid for this season. So each season is kind of separate, but if you're holding some diamond fragments or a diamond potion, you can definitely continue to claim your diamond fragments if there's still some available in your potions, and also blend those diamond fragments into some stunning diamond pomelo. So that's still going on. For this season, you will need the carbon and the collectibles from this season to create your rocket potion and continue on with the adventure this season.
Ceskam here from Challenge Deck, and one thing I wanted to ask was, has there been any major changes to the code like within probably the last 2 weeks, because on our end we're experiencing a lot of errors. We're just having a lot of errors with our app, and we run Telos too. We haven't been getting the errors with Telos, so it could be an internal issue on our side. But
changes to which code?
The EOS code, just in general, just EOS, the network.
And what type of errors? Just
syncing, and then saying lack of CPU when we have enough CPU. So our smart contract will have a good amount of CPU. It won't be an issue, and then things won't go through. And from our end, is saying that is from a lack of CPU. So, yeah.
When you say CPU, Telos did not switch over to the power up model. EOS did, and so in Telos you still have to stake resources. That model has not been the case in EOS now for a little over a year. So when you say you have CPU, you mean you've gone through the, I guess at this point not new, but new process, which is different than on Telos, correct?
Yeah. I mean, everything was running great until within probably 10 days ago, or maybe 2 weeks. So we've noticed in the past where sometimes if there's like an update in the code, sometimes we got to change things a little bit. But yeah, we've been having this issue for probably a week. And so, I mean, there's been no major changes to the way things way Power App works in the last month, right? All changes have been with the Power Up model have been not that recent, right?
Do you get an error that says something like 240 or
it's mostly it's mostly the subjective billing. So I'm pretty sure that what you're hitting is you're probably running everything sort of a back end, and your contract is probably doing more than the average transaction. And whenever your account actually has sort of a level of CPU, you actually have, if you're doing a lot of transactions, like, more than an average user, you'll probably hit that subjective billing, and you have to oversubscribe your CPU. So it might see that you have available CPU, but that's not when you're a contract constantly pushing a lot of transactions, because then essentially the endpoints will start to rate limit you because you're pushing a lot of transactions. So I think the solution for you, or the easy solution, would be to oversubscribe your CPU to have more excess, to not hit the that sort of subjective billing. And what you can do is we have a website called Lost Transaction. It's still very beta prototypey. You can put in your contract name, and you can see which type of errors that come out of your contract, saying it might run out of CPU, or it might be failed, or whatnot. So we can give you the link for that, and you would just put in your contract that you're operating with, and it will tell you which types of errors you're receiving, or which type of errors that the peer-to-peer and the block producer nodes are reporting. And my guess is probably the CPU usage, that you do have enough CPU, but not enough to surpass the subjective billing rate limit, because you might be pushing more than the average user.
Well, we are. We have quite a few transactions. Typically we have probably, I don't know, maybe a few hundred a day, or give or take. So we'll check that out. That sounds like what might be going on for us.
That only if you bring it over to the developer chat, we'll gladly help you out.
Okay, appreciate it.
Aaron, you were trying to say something as well?
That only applies when you're submitting transactions that fail for some reason. Then you get subjectively billed for the failure. This has been something that's come on recently in the last few months. More and more API operators are enabling it. And so I would look through and see if you had failed transactions that were retried over and over again. Because if that is the case, then you were getting CPU billed on that specific API for those failed transactions. And that will clear eventually. But we run into this problem with fuel occasionally, because we rent through Power Up to get more fuel constantly. And if we are submitting a transaction that fails, and we retry and it fails, and we keep doing that, then we eventually get to the point where we can't broadcast the transaction, and we get CPU errors. So definitely check the logs and see if there were failed transactions.
It's worse if you have more failures in one block too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can always try changing API nodes to get around it immediately.
I've also noticed lately that, and I don't know, Chase, if this is you guys that are getting the block, or if it's your users saying that they're trying to use your application and that's getting blocked. But I've noticed that the blocks.io Tippit account is often out or is no longer being monitored, and it's often out of CPU lately as well. And so people are trying to use blocks and they get the rate limited, even though they have, or sorry, they get the failed transaction. Even though they have powered up their account, they're still on blocks trying to use the free CPU. They haven't disabled that, and blocks itself is out of CPU. So I don't know if this applies in this instance, but for everybody else listening, if you get the error, I think it's the same error that everybody's getting. It says something like 240 milliseconds of CPU required, and you've got greater than 0, and then you look at your account and it's clear that you've got enough, you've powered up your account, but you're trying to do it on blocks, and blocks is trying to cover it for you, and they don't have enough.
And I think this is true, but if the numbers, because there's 2 numbers in that error message, and if they both are 0, that's when the subjective rate limiting kicks in.
No, the one I'm talking about is, I think it's 240 and 0.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but when you submit failed transactions over and over again, it'll give you zeros on both, which is super confusing. But I'm pretty sure that's the subjective billing kicking in.
And maybe Stephane or Denis, if you can link to the subjective billing articles that that Drew wrote, that might be a good time to post them as well. And Chase, if you want to go read those, they'll give you a little bit of insights as to what's going on, or potentially what's going on.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, we'll look into it. I think that sounds like the issue we've been having. We've been getting those errors that I think I've been seeing the 200, 400, but I'll get with other people on the team, our team, and look into that. Thanks.
And Aaron, maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about the API transaction lifecycle improvements that are in Mandel 3.1 that you guys essentially commissioned or led to the creation of through the API Plus Blue Paper.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's. I'm trying to remember how that would apply to this. Because there's
the API transaction lifecycle improvements actually come and give more tooling to block producers and to API providers, so that this would not be as much of an issue in the future. Give more controls.
Maybe
to the providers.
Yeah, more intelligent operations could be performed that would help you get around this, but I don't think it would prevent this if your code wasn't necessarily updated.
When you mean code not updated, do you mean those who haven't upgraded?
The people who are running applications or scripts or backends that are processing transactions. Like they would
even
have
though
to
they
check.
would have upgraded to 3.1?
Correct. I mean, if they're connected to an API that's running 3.1, they would have the new endpoints to check for the status. The endpoint might be able to retry the transaction to make sure it's not lost. But I think there may be some improvements for how subjective billing is calculated. Like we were just talking about, if you submit failed transactions over and over again, you eventually get blocked, essentially. It's an abuse prevention mechanism. And one of the tweakable parameters for API operators is going to be able to set how long that window is. Right now, I think by default it's 24 hours, and the 3.1 feature should let you adjust that timer. API operators can adjust that timer, so it's like an hour or 30 minutes or whatever. I know Matthew had played with a bunch of numbers, and I think a lot of API operators on EOS have actually lowered the 24-hour window down to a couple hours.
There's also the ability to configure the strikes, the amount of strikes before getting limited.
What was that?
Well, there's the 3-strike rule,
Ah,
and in RC in 3.1, there's the ability to configure how many strikes you get. So right now it's hard coded to 3, but you can modify that on your node.
yeah. I heard stripes. I think my
All
audio is
the
too
all the
quiet
white
today.
stripes.
It's 3 strikes, you're out. Yeah, I guess the idea behind that subjective billing, the way that I put it, is like you're going to the penalty box. So after you've abused too much, all right, you're in the penalty box for 24 hours, for an hour, for whatever it is. Sorry, you can no longer play anymore. No more chocolate for you.
Gonna buy your chocolate from somewhere else. I was gonna jump in earlier, but the conversation just kept going, so I didn't. But when we brought up kind of the user protections, when we were talking about User Plus, or User Plus, Recover Plus, like really the approach to protecting users from phishing and from those types of attack, I think, are in the really early stages of thought. And the Wallet Plus paper does have the application registry, which could lead into protection mechanisms for individual users. But we need the registry to exist first. So once that exists, then we can hit a point where we can identify malicious actors, and the wallet interfaces can make recommendations or provide warnings or something like that if a user tries to interact with a malicious user. That is that's not as far out as Recovery, or it's further out than Recovery Plus. But there is some thought being put into protection systems for individual users. It's not user recovery, but it's a prevention mechanism that could really help in that regard.
Yeah, same as the recording contracts that you guys suggested. They're
Yeah.
building blocks that can be leveraged to improve the user experience. And really, that Wallet Plus blue paper was all about. I mean, people keep thinking, oh, you guys are going to be building a wallet. I guess terrible choice of name.
Yeah.
It really is about the user experience, and how applications connect to the chain. And facilitating that process, having XDKs and such. So yeah, that application registry is a big key component of that as well, yes. And these are all things that we've highlighted as priorities, either inside the coalition or within EOS as well, and are working towards being able to implement. It's been an interesting, I guess, shift of things over the last couple of months in EOS. A few months back, or I guess even just 8 months ago, one of the larger issues was not having access to funding to be able to take on these projects or these initiatives. And now we do have access to funding, and the blocker is not having the people being able to take on those projects, or the skill sets being able to do so. So a really good example of what we just talked about, the SDKs and application registry. The people saying seemingly that they could be doing this would be Aaron and his team. And we tell Aaron, hey, we've got funding available for this. Can you do it? And the response we get is, yes, but it's going to take a while because I need to hire more people, or I have other, I can't do everything all at once. So it's been an interesting shift in, the problem, or the issues never end. They just get moved along somewhere else in that in that path, essentially.
Yeah, it's really true. It's been interesting. Like the start of this year was blue papers and research and all that, and then there was like a small lull. But immediately after that, it was not necessarily jumping into development. It was jumping into like organization building, and getting to the point where we could actually have these things created. Because I mean, at that point in time when we were doing the blue papers, I think we had 4 full-time developers. And we have free versions of Anchor and then Unicove to maintain. So that's like one product per person. And now if we're going to take on these additional responsibilities, we really need to ramp up unless we abandon anchor, which we absolutely cannot do. So it's been some interesting challenges to get to the point where we can say, all right, we're ready, let's go, and get started. But at least in the meantime, we're really refining those ideas and getting to the point where, when we're at the starting position, we can just start running.
It goes back to a little bit as well. I think there was a conversation last week or so. I think it was in the Eden chat of why are a lot of these initiatives centralized in very few teams? And we talked about this months ago in one of the Fireside chats that Aaron, for example, is wearing 7 hats at the time. I think it was 6 or 7 that we counted. And it's not that Aaron wants to wear 7 hats. It's that there are 7 hats that need to be worn, and there's only Aaron out there. And so the problem is not that Aaron wears 7 hats, is that we need more people to be able to take on those responsibilities. And that's the stage of growth that we're in right now, which is not necessarily a bad problem to have. We've now turned a curve, or we've done somewhat of a U-turn in that sense. Now it's creating the environment so that more people can come, more people with skill sets that we can leverage can come, because now the funding, the mechanisms, the processes, the frameworks, they're now all laid out so that Aaron can willingly give you one of his hats.
Yep. And I am slowly offloading those hats. It feels good. My head feels so much cooler.
All right. Chris Barnes, are you around? Do you want to give us a little hackathon update?
Yes, sir. I'm here. So, hackathon progressing. We are at the ever-loved, everyone's favorite stage of lawyers dealing with contracts. I hate it. But so we're at the stage where we're just reviewing the final bits. So Helios is working in partnership with the ENF. So there's a contract between us and then also between Helios and DevPost, who will be the platform that will hold this virtual idea-a-thon. So we've settled on a few of the details, one of them being that it's an idea-a-thon. And so that will really minimize the code requirements. So Steph, I know you mentioned before that was exciting to you. So good news, that's moving forward. So the start date is still to be determined, but basically once we get past this contract stage, and that will begin about a 5-week timer where we'll work with DevPost and get everything populated on their side so it can be all up and running from their end. And then the event will begin. It'll be roughly 8 weeks, 2 first weeks of registration. And if folks don't have teams, then we'll try to help facilitate folks finding each other so they can have a good team. And then 6 weeks of the main event. There will be a series of seminars and workshops throughout the whole duration. Well, the first one will be like a Kickstarter. We'll open it up. Then we'll have a design thinking workshop to help folks think through how to design an application or a project and what are the do's and don'ts from that view. Then there'll be an EOSIO technical overview workshop, tokenomics gamification, a business plan workshop, community dev and marketing, and then finally a pitch deck workshop. With the final week will be a judging week where the intention, and so some of these details may change, so please don't hold me to this, but this is sort of what we're shooting for. The final week would be very much like a Shark's Tank or a Dragon's Den if you're in Canada approach, where the president, those who are submitting their proposal will be like a pitch delivery, kind of in line with how Helios does our incubation, where at the end of the incubator, we do like a live pitch session. So that would be a live event that we'll have kind of running on YouTube, and it'll be a little logistically challenging, but that's the goal. So it'll be kind of fun. Hopefully we get a lot of engagement and some live participation and people watching folks be nervous delivering their pitch. Kind of fun, a little nerve-wracking, but hopefully fun still. We'll have an opening ceremony and a closing ceremony. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell. The prizes, we settled on $75,000 for the total prize pool. So not a huge amount, but also very low barrier to participate. So we're kind of factoring that together where we don't need a huge prize to draw people in to participate, because it's really easy, hopefully, to participate. So the goal is you get a lot of the folks within this community on this call to really join, come together, work together, participate in these seminars. And hopefully it's like a really good congealing moment. And then also using the reach that DevPost has, we bring in a lot of new folks into the ecosystem as well. Again, with that kind of low barrier to entry to participate, get to know EOS, EOSIO. And then the bigger sort of where this leads to is future hackathons, future events where we kind of use the same formula and then really branch out to do more tooling and developer and actually like go beyond the ideation phase and actually building stuff and getting it built out. So that's the rough overview. I gave a lot there, but hopefully that sounds exciting to folks and kind of get your brain thinking about what would be a great idea to bring to what does EOS need? What does the blockchain world need?
That's great, Chris. Thanks for the update. It sounds like it's shaping up very nicely. When are the dates finalized? I don't know. Maybe I missed it when you were talking.
No, not yet. So it'll be sort of the start. We'll know that once we get through this, again, beloved contract phase, that will then allow us to sign on the dotted line with DevPost. And that begins a timer where it's a 5-week timer to work with them. That's sort of their requirement to get everything up on their site. And then after that 5-week timer ends, the actual 8-week event begins. So as soon as I get these contracts across the line, I'll have dates and we'll firm all that up and make sure we spread that far and wide to the community so we know exactly how that will line up. But ideally, it's soon. Like I want this to kick off as soon as possible, so it's wrapping up by sometime in August, maybe early September, worst case. But that's hopefully how it plays out.
Awesome. Thanks for answering. Denis, I had to give you a little server mute. Your coding typing was coming in through your mic. Okay, anyone have any thoughts or comments or questions for Chris Barnes and the hackathon team?
I just want to say thank you to Chris. So the idea of hosting a hackathon was brought up on a Fireside chat, multiple months ago, and the community kind of picked that up. We had Phoenix that led that for a period of time, and that died out. And Chris really picked up the reins and has been really pushing this towards that finish line. And Chris keeps saying, the contracting phase. The contracting phase is quite key to this, and this has been a showstopper in the past. Somebody needs to be accountable to run that hackathon. Somebody needs to, essentially take over the reins of that project management and give assurances to the network that the funds that are going to be spent will be properly spent. And that's what's been, from our point of view, from the ENF, we need to ensure that when we do engage with vendors with anybody, that we do so protecting the EOS token holders. And that's why there's a lot of back and forth on that front. But really, Chris took this by the horns. And when this hackathon proceeds, it is definitely because of Chris. So big kudos to Chris.
Thank you, Yves. But I will say that Phoenix really did kick this off. So we certainly owe him a great amount of debt there. And Jesse and Chevs from the EOS Bees, they've also been really showing up and, so they need a lot of credit as well because they've been showing up and they're going to help deliver this event. So it should also be noted that Jesse and Chevs and the EOS Bees, that org is very much deserving of our thanks as well to help make this happen. But thank you.
And other people within Helios, right? So there's, as you mentioned, for those seminars, the other people within Helios are going to be contributing to the workload of the hackathon itself or the ideathon itself.
Yeah. Wax Gavriel and I think Ben Sigmund is also going to step up and help us. And Darren Swords. So to some alpha there, the tokenomics and gamification workshop will be run by Darren EOS Network. So.
Yeah, big shout out to the UX guys. So for those following, the coalition is comprised of 4 different projects, UX being one of them. Guillaume, Darren and the other folks at UX have been really, really great in providing their particular skill set to EOS and to the coalition, and now to this ideathon. So shout out to them.
It's what community is about, right? We all come together and bring our little bits, pool it all together, and something awesome can come out of it.
All right. Moving on to some other topics. We had Bithum today offering staking rewards for the first time. So I think there's only a post in Korean from BitHub. I'll share it in the chat. You guys can Google Translate it if you want to read it. But basically it just announces that their users who hold EOS on that exchange can now earn rewards through a staking program, which is nice. And I'm actually going to read a tweet by Yves on the subject from today. Another good tweet by Yves, explaining a bit about what this means. So let me just share it. Oh, there we go. Yves beat me to it. Shared it in the stream chat. I'm gonna give it a quick read through here. So Yves says, you may not realize this, but Bithum Global offering EOS staking rewards is a very big deal. This will create a domino effect that benefits the EOS community. Short thread. Bithum is one of the two largest Korean crypto exchanges. Together, they own about 25% of all EOS tokens. The problem is those tokens have been sitting idly on exchanges with no yielding opportunities, which disincentivizes EOS investment. In the past, Korean exchanges have claimed they're prohibited from offering staking rewards due to regulatory issues. But now you have an interesting situation now that Bithum Global is offering staking rewards. With yield now being offered for staking EOS, this may help reinvigorate the Korean EOS community and push more exchanges to launch staking programs of their own. Remember, about 25% of EOS tokens are held by the Korean community. This is a big deal. The question everyone is wondering is why now? It seems like this change came out of the blue, but with all the chatter surrounding the new EOS and the EOS comeback story, it seems appropriate. So this is foreshadowing what will likely happen elsewhere across the world. With our upcoming Yield Plus liquidity incentive program, expect to see more and more exchanges offering competitive staking rewards. This means more yield for token holders and more competition to buy EOS. This is the start of something special for EOS, major exchanges offering competitive staking rewards. At the ENF, we will continue to fight for the EOS community. So that's really, really nice news coming out of the Korean community. Very nice thread by Yves. Been posting some really good threads lately. And so always good to hear more opportunities for earning yield on holding EOS. In that same vein, I don't know if anyone has some thoughts or questions on that topic. Maybe I'll give a few seconds for people to jump on here if they want to. And if not, maybe we'll continue discussing some other interesting tweets from Yves over the past week. Joe Louis trying to come on.
Yeah, I got a mic now.
There we go. Welcome, Joe Louis, to the Discord Fireside Chats.
Hey, I was gonna comment. I saw a good question, and I think a lot of people have it. Their gut reaction is, where does that yield come from? And honestly, for an exchange, it's often their block producer rewards. So that makes up the bulk of their yield opportunities. And so that's why you only see them give a range of 1% to 2% versus someone like Binance or these other exchanges that have different operations or different staking pools with weeks or months of staking required to hit different tiers. But the other component to this that's so important is Binance, and I didn't read the details of Bithum. I imagine they will fall into the same structure, is that they will limit the amount of participants, or in other words, the amount of EOS. Sorry, if you can hear my daughter. But they'll limit the amount of participating tokens so that they can keep an attractive yield. And that's the same thing everyone does, whether it's CFI, DeFi, whatever. There's a finite amount of tokens. So if they're earning 1,000 EOS a day in block rewards, then they take that and they can create a limitation on how many participants can receive 1, 2, 200% APR, whatever they're wanting to promote, does have a limit. And you'll see that come into play as time passes and people join that. They'll have to tinker with that number.
So I guess were you asking a question, Joe, in terms of where that stake is coming from, or where that yield is coming from?
No, I was explaining. It often comes from block production rewards. I saw that Perry, who's usually here but not here today, was quick to reply to that tweet. Where does the reward come from? And then he responded with an additional tweet of Caitlin Long. She's awesome, talking about leverage, and that's really nothing to do with where these staking rewards come from.
So I don't know where these staking rewards are coming from. What I do know, and I guess this is relevant to your question or the comment that you made, is that the regulatory landscape in South Korea is quite particular, and it has been being tested, and it is pushing the limits, especially as we see with what's been going on with or what happened with Terra and Dokwan. I do know that the competition between Upbit and Bithum, the two largest exchanges, has been heating up. And it wouldn't surprise me that this is actually going to be a cost to the exchange in order to try and gather Upbit's user base, which is much larger in terms of EOS token holders than is currently present on Bithum. And so it wouldn't surprise me that this is a customer acquisition cost that they're willing to invest in or take as a means to shift a significant portion of EOS token holders in anticipation for regulatory changes that are seemingly coming in Korea. And so it wouldn't surprise me that this is simply a customer acquisition cost that they're willing to onboard. Right now, I don't recall the latest numbers, so somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, and I likely am. I believe Upbit has roughly 160 million EOS tokens, maybe 180 at some point, and Bithum had roughly 60.
Yeah,
and so this is a massive opportunity, known opportunity. So if Bithum sees that EOS potentially has turned a corner and there's an opportunity there, they may want to just get ahead of the curve and come and swipe those users faster than what Upbit would be able to do in their program, because Upbit has been very public about saying that they can't do that, but Bithum is also very public in now doing it. So there's more to it than meets the eye.
Right. There's. I didn't really have a question. That my comment was part of how they could get that yield and how it has been in the past. And of course, Bithum has a profitable business as an exchange, at least when cryptos are going up for the most part. And so certainly they can subsidize any yield opportunities off of their normal business, even trading fees that they may accumulate from EOS itself. But my comment was just historically, it makes sense that when an exchange is validating on a network, they are reaping some reward, and then they can turn some of that reward into yield for their users. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of their block production reward is how they justify 1 to 2% yield.
One of the things that's interesting as well, if I'm not mistaken, in that post, I believe there were 3 tokens that they're offering yield on. I believe those are the only tokens that they offer yield on. So this is the first time a Korean exchange offers yield. So it's not like they had yield before on Bitcoin or on Ethereum, as do other exchanges. This is Bithum saying, we are now going to test the regulatory waters within Korea, and we are willing to do that with EOS as the first asset. This is monumental. This is not, we have 12 other yield programs and we're adding a 13th one. This is, we literally have 0 in a country where everybody has 0, and we are placing EOS at the forefront.
Right, and you're seeing, as you mentioned, Upbit, a major competitor of theirs who holds far more EOS than they do, is signaling that they're most likely about to start doing the same thing. A lot of people have been
yes and no. They're signaling that they can't do that.
Well, so their end user agreement that just got revised does mention that they are open to validating blocks. Okay, well they're going to start quickly becoming a block producer if that's the case, but they haven't said they will or won't do that. But
my vote EOS says that they won't do that. That's the idea. That's what's driving that.
It'll be interesting.
So will they actually stick to their guns, to their philosophy of we're not going to offer yield?
I doubt it. I don't. Yeah, it doesn't make business sense.
Exactly. I call bullshit on that.
Right. So that's not what their end user agreement says. It does say that they are opening the possibilities to doing validation work. And when I hear that, I hear they're going to start reaping reward from the network. And none of this has any ulterior undertones. I'm just saying this is a super obvious place where they get their reward that they can then potentially use to subsidize yield opportunities. And if Upbit with 180 million EOS decides they'll start validating on EOS or any chain they hold tokens of, they will quickly become a profitable business through block rewards, and most exchanges give those rewards back to their users. So I would imagine if Bithum is testing the waters on this, I'm in the camp that thinks Upbit will guerrilla in and take their dominant position.
And publicly go against what they've been saying, highlighting that what they've been saying was actually not at all what they were thinking.
Right. I don't personally buy the goodwill that we want to do the integrous thing of not taking advantage of an opportunity.
Not. It makes no sense.
Right. No, I don't.
No business sense.
Not
and
at all.
It's not good or bad, and that's why the post that I highlighted, it doesn't matter. It just means more competition, more exchanges offering competitive staking rewards, more yield for token holders, more reason to buy EOS. This is extremely good for us.
Right. It's I only highlighted Upbit there because for some reason I'm a proponent of the Koreans pushing around this change.org thing because it is something they seem in their Telegram groups to be excited about, and I'm for that. Whatever gets any community excited about something in EOS, great. My understanding of it is that they will likely go with the flow of all the past exchanges, and they will validate blocks, and that's how they will accumulate tokens, and then they will turn that into staking rewards for the people that stake on their platform, which is the business sense of that proposition.
And so I'm wondering how that's going to impact the Upbit developer conference that I've been potentially invited to speak at, but potentially have a spot. I wonder if then the narrative and what they want to discuss will change by the time September comes around.
Yeah.
As you say as well, I'm a big part of why I'm excited about this is it's more talk of EOS, more people getting excited about EOS for whatever reason. It's just more eyes on EOS.
Yep. So there's not really any evil undertones in my perspective. It all spawned from just the Twitter replies you had.
Well, I anticipate that the on-chain yield will be better than 1 to 2%. So just from the Yield Plus incentive program, it's essentially a 5% yield on the EOS. So what the DeFi protocols do with that yield is up to them. But if they're passing it all back to their users, for example, then it would be a 5% yield. So if you're in like a USDT EOS pool, both sides of that pool would be getting yield, for example. So like your entire value of that LP, if the protocol is passing it all, would be a minimum of 5%. And then if it's some other type of program where they add another token, like a DeFi box type token or a Uni token or whatever DeFi protocol it is, then it could be potentially higher. So that's the idea with Yield Plus is offering. So it's nice to see that these exchanges are adding a little bit of a yield, because obviously any percent is better than 0%. But the idea is still to move the activity on chain. So that's very much part of the Yield Plus initiative. But it's nice to see opportunities presenting themselves to people who didn't have that opportunity before because of the travel restriction, or the I forget what it's called, the travel. Joe, help me out here. What's it called? The travel law?
The travel rule, and it is
travel rule.
It's quite a honors barrier for people to try and hustle around to pull their money. So that is another upside to these staking opportunities on exchange, is for these people that aren't going to go through that effort of kind of hopping exchanges and trying to withdraw under certain limits. And the people will do that and collect higher yield for it. But it's great that some people that are not up for that kind of effort will be able to do it on the exchange platform itself.
Mm-hmm. Literally, so I posted in the text chat, but I shared a screenshot of Bithum, because at the time when we were talking 5 minutes ago, there are only 3 tokens. They added ICX staking and IOST staking like a minute after I took a screenshot of it. So it does look like they're adding more and more tokens, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's funny. UI Upbit won't be that far behind them.
Mm-hmm. I'm noticing there's no lockup on these yields yet, so it'll be interesting to see if they incorporate that. That's part of the reason Binance offers some good yields, is because they separate the pools. So they have like flexible staking, they have like 1 month lockups and 3 month or 100-day lockups, and they weight heavier towards those willing to lock up longer. So it'll be interesting to see how this matures. But it's still great that these opportunities are finally presenting themselves on Bithum. Because I use Coinbase. I can't even stake my EOS there if I had EOS on the exchange. So yeah.
It's great to see as well that if this list grows to 15 assets, 20 assets, we still have why did they choose EOS as the first one?
And why is EOS in the top left? So there's 5 of them. Nope, now there's 3 again. I just refreshed the page. I don't know what's going on. But EOS is the top left, and it's not in alphabetical order because Crypto.com, Crow, is alphabetically earlier. So
they're just bullish.
Although I am looking, I'm looking at it in English too. I have no idea how the alphabet works in Korean.
I'm looking on the Korean page, and it's still EOS at first.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of where they're placed, EOS was the first one mentioned, the first one that actually came out, which is awesome.
All right, good stuff. Okay, so final topic of the day. The Vitalik comments on EOS recently that brought a lot of attention from Ethereum community, EOS community. Was it sarcastic? Was it not sarcastic? What's going on? Does it matter? We got a ton of exposure. It does not matter. But yeah, before we get in here, let's see a vote. Let's see a vote in the voice chat, not the stream chat, but the voice chat, which has been pretty active today, which is great. Let's see a vote. 1 if you think it was not sarcastic, it was just legitimate, and 0 if you think it was sarcasm.
What about the it doesn't matter?
Well, we know it doesn't matter anyways. We're just curious.
No, I think that a lot of people do not realize that it does not matter. Thank you, Chris. I vote 3 or 2 because there was no 2.
Denis goes doesn't matter as well. We got Vlad and CAC.
He tried to be binary, man. He tried.
Sorry, I kind of screwed that up. Sorry.
Oh, now we got more 2s coming in.
Even now you've influenced the chat.
Oh, Yves, so yeah, I mean, the effect has been real. Just looking at, for example, the analytics of the ENF account and Yves' personal account. The amount of new followers, I just got an alert. Rand Nooner started following Yves, so that's the latest follower. I don't think he wasn't following me before. Crypto Man Rand.
Okay, cool. I don't know. We got Octobull voting 10. I'm not sure what that means, but pretty sure it's positive.
If that was sarcasm, it was terribly executed because it just the whole part it was half true. It was half true, so it's shitty sarcasm.
Oh
yeah, but think about it. If that comment was made exactly 1 year ago, where things were at that time, someone hears about EOS, they look into it, they see like what's going on here, and now like it served as that entry point of what is going on here. They see Yves' tweet thread that like goes into detail, explaining what's been going on. The entire timeline wall is filled with like dozens of tweets over just like the last week. Same with the ENF account, all the blue papers, the EOSnetwork.com. Like there's just 9 months. Like the ENF has only been around for 9 or 10 months. That's it. But there's just this trail of ridiculous amounts of work and effort that's been going on. So it did us such a big favor that's why, like you've said, it doesn't matter, sarcasm or not. We were ready for it. It was perfect timing.
So if I just open up my Twitter analytics right now, in terms of tweets, month over month, the last 28-day summary, 3,350% increase. Tweet impressions, 2,108% increase. Profile visits, 140% increase. Mentions, 243% increase. Does it matter?
Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
I posted in the group chat or the stream chat an interesting article from Crypto Slate. I mean, there's a million articles, right? And a lot of them are coming out like it was sarcasm, or was it? Well, that Crypto Slate one for me took kind of a neutral stance, and it added some background on Vitalik and his commentary, his tweet history. I don't follow Vitalik, I'm sure I'm familiar with him, but I have a very limited list of people I care to listen to right now. So I don't know.
He's in this chat right now. You know that, right?
I don't know all the ins and outs of
pseudonym of Trimbot.
His history is beyond me because I don't care at the moment. But that's what I mean. I agree. It doesn't matter. It's that you take advantage of the opportunity and you don't just turn right around and start being like, oh well, yeah. I mean, is this sarcasm or not? But to jump on it, and as all those metrics showed, that's where the value was. But that Crypto Slate article has some interesting color that did leave me like, gosh, he is kind of an odd dude, and he's hard to read, and who knows? And then I'm ultimately right back at who cares? It's the metrics speak for themselves.
Actually, yeah, I kind of agree. I think it was a good move to not really react to anything and just, cool, yeah, well, here's some facts and here's some interesting things going on, and not being like, oh, well, hey, thanks, bud, or hey, that's, screw you for whatever. No, just neutral approach and then overload with information.
So from my perspective, I agree that it doesn't matter. But I'm looking at some data. So the bees tracked the responses from crypto influencers. We tracked 60 crypto influencers, and we rated the sentiment. We found that 12 out of 60 were positive, and the rest were either neutral or negative. So when you look at the crypto influencers, if it was sarcastic, they didn't get it because they were out of their mind. They had no idea.
You said 12 out of 60 were positive?
Correct. Yeah.
It's 12 more than 0.
Right. And so if we're focusing, well, the bees personally, we're focusing on crypto influencers. So that kind of gives us a hint on which ones we could potentially convert to EOS. But generally speaking, about the sarcasm issue. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
What was the neutral number?
It was about, here, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah,
15.
this number's already big enough. That matters. You know, it's.
Yeah. And so, yeah, with the reaction from these crypto influencers, like the sarcasm did not land if it was there.
I mean, that's 18 plus 12, right? So we have 60, which are either, or 30, which are either neutral or positive out of 60. That's a fantastic ratio for people who are primarily ETH maximalists because they're following Vitalik.
Yeah, baby.
Actually, way more than I was expecting, to be honest.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
So I shared Yves' tweet here in the voice chat. I'm not gonna read it out, but it's a really good recap of basically a lot of the things that have been going on lately in the EOS ecosystem, and of course it was absolutely great opportunity for us to get in there and share all the great progress that's been going on to the wider crypto space while we have their attention. So definitely a big win overall this week for EOS on social media through this tweet. Regardless, it was sarcastic. Anyways, I'm gonna let it go. 448 likes on that tweet from Yves replying to Vitalik and 205 retweets. Some pretty strong metrics there. If you haven't done your part yet, definitely get out there, like, retweet, help promote EOS. All right, we're coming up on 2 hours almost already. Again, I thought it was kind of didn't have that many topics. Wasn't sure if we'd go the full 2 hours. And of course, again, we went the full 2 hours. I really should know by now. We never go lower, under 2 hours. Yeah, so if at this point, community open mic, if you guys have something you want to share about a new topic, or a throwback to something that we were talking about earlier in the show, or you want to ask a question, now's the time.
I dropped a little alpha Telegram link inside the Discord there. That's something that's just been on my mind. And I'm sorry, not sorry to kind of blow that up. But I keep thinking about that because that's something that strikes at the heart of a lot of long, age-old conversations in EOS. And that, among all the things going on with the ENF and Mandel and EOSIO and rebranding and Recover and all the working groups, those little comments from Guillaume probably got me more excited than anything. I'm excited about a lot of this stuff. But
our eggs on the call, right?
I keep an
Is he willing to speak?
I mean, I know that all kind of ideation and preliminary stuff.
So what are you talking about here, Joe Louis? For those who can't access the message right now.
So in last week's coalition call, I watched the public YouTube stream. And Guillaume is a team what is he doing? Presenting the faster finality to the coalition. And he was doing this last week, and he was just kind of in the beginning of his presentation, he was making a few comments, and some of them were regarding mathematical proofs that Eric requested. And I thought this was going to be a pretty dry segment of the call. And then he said why he believes those proofs were requested. And he goes on to make comments like there could be slashing consequences or opening the possibility for more block producers than 21. And so that all of a sudden my radar starts going off, like pay attention here, because this is more than just faster finality. And so Guillaume goes on and says that we built this proposal, the faster finality proposal, on the assumption that we would remain a DPoS consensus mechanism, but theoretically support up to 100 block producers. And I know that number has to have some color to it. There's not a good reason to just go straight to 100. More block producers, slower finality is kind of the crude explanation there. But just the idea of approaching these kinds of really heavy topics for EOS is fascinating to me for someone that's been here since Genesis.
That depends on the implementation of the finality, which I think is very interesting. I'm not saying that that's something that's going to happen specifically, but depending on the implementation of finality, it might not matter how many block producers there are to reach finality, as long as there's something which moves towards it. So it could be more than that, or it could be less than that.
Now Nathan's blowing my mind. Let's go, 10,000. But even beyond that, the signatures, aggregate signatures was fascinating. I've heard him in the past in Telegram talking about Schnorr and BLS, and then having Guillaume explain the advantages of BLS and implications of Ethereum, of working better with Ethereum. Forgive me, I'm going to have to switch off to pay attention to my daughter, but that the signatures were important also.
Yeah.
Zack was actually just saying in one of our chats that
and this is Lovejoy, and with preliminary.
Come on, Brandon. Nathan was just about to say something, and then you cut out.
Nathan got a whole.
No, I don't care who, but you like paused too. What's going on here?
I'm just saying that Guillaume will probably be on the call next Wednesday on Fireside Chat. I asked him if he could make it. He said it's a tough day for him, but with some, if it's on his radar, he can make it. So maybe save some questions about this for next week. Possibility. That is all. Nathan.
No, I was just saying that Zack was saying in one of the chats that, in one of our internal chats, that a round table with some of the core developers, the protocol developers, would be really good. And I think that what you just said, Joe Lewis, how this stuff excited you, because this is stuff that nobody really talks about outside of the protocol developers, and it's barely been publicized in the time that EOSIO has been a thing, is something that we can probably change. And it's probably very interesting to a lot of people, because we developers might not think it's interesting to a lot of people outside of developers, but you are elucidating that it is actually quite interesting for people who are just in the ecosystem, not necessarily people who are contributing to core development.
Yeah, for background, I'm absolutely fascinated with the proposition, and I can't write a single line of code in any language.
I just hope people can realize what's been happening, how it's been happening, and where we're going without having mentioned that we're going there. I'll just leave it at that. And I dropped hints of it last week when I talked about Yield Plus and how it was structured and how things people didn't even catch kind of what the underlying incentives were with Yield Plus. Think about what Joe Louis brought up, and how all that fits in the larger picture.
There was another little nugget that I caught myself when the meeting was live, around 36 minutes or so, 35, 36 minutes in that call, about posting proofs to Ethereum from EOSIO. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that went hand in hand with the signature discussion.
Mm-hmm. It's basically shrinking the data set so that it's more gas efficient to be posting proofs to another chain, kind of leverage the security.
Right. And Guillaume talking about how expensive it is to do full set of proofs, or it can quickly get astronomical and out of hand. It's something unreasonable. And then changing to supporting different signatures like BLS could kind of revolutionize these proofs, at least in cost.
Joe, have you dug around the GitHub at all for any treasure hunts or nuggets?
Yeah, actually I did. But I think the last time I did it was maybe a week ago, and I was digging around I forget what you titled it, or it's like the ideas or the imagination zone or something. There's a bunch of folders in there with not really anything in there. One had a README.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to go dig a little bit further.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah.
It's difficult with the screaming baby at times. Sometimes I get my attention diverted.
Everyone on the team is very GitHub oriented, doing things out in the open, because it's the opposite of what used to happen with the official repo, for example. There's a lot of nuggets there now. I mean, even with the grant framework, for example, the grant framework, I think, was public on the GitHub for 2 weeks before we actually announced it. So if anyone ever wants to do some detective work, the GitHub's always a fun place to hang out and take a peek.
Right. That was, I think, where some big name drops showed up. I think if somebody was crawling that regularly, they even got a precursor to Nathan up on scene. And
they did. Wrecked Kid was over there like, hey, look who's suddenly a validator of the...
So I saw those things a few days earlier, and then I couldn't believe it that I thought I had seen the names previously, but he acknowledged that those were new additions.
So internally, we had a discussion where somebody was like, yeah, let's make you a validator or a approver. And I was like, somebody's going to notice that. They're like, no, nobody's going to notice that. And immediately, Wrecked Kid posted a Twitter message.
Yeah. The grant framework, I did see that Lost Diamonds, or whatever it's called, that game. That was interesting. I started digging into that, and he doesn't mention it, but it's exactly like geocaching. If anyone here is kind of outdoorsy and used to get involved with geocaching, it's kind of fascinating and exciting.
Geocaching and Pokemon Go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's both of them combined, with then actually finding a treasure with $1,000 in it at the end.
Yeah, so it could end up in real world fights. I'd fight for $1,000.
So they are in the real world. They are operating in Norway right now. So you would need to, at this point, the pilot project is in Norway. But yes, you could go to Norway, get into an actual fight with somebody who's trying to get that geocache that has $1,000 worth of EOS in it. Pitching.
right, last call for question, comments, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
I want to make a commercial for Wallet Plus, Aaron, and also James of the EOS Power Network, creating the pull subscriptions, and then finally Matthias of PIOS for privacy. I just want to express that I think the combination of those three projects, in my mind, seems to be like a synergistic combination, so the sum greater than the parts. And it seems like to me that should be our first priority. So I just wanted to put that out there. Absolute silence.
Super Bowl commercial.
All right. I think we're going to leave it there. We're going to wrap up this show. Thanks everyone for joining the EOS Community Fireside Chat this week. And tune in next week. Like Brandon hinted at, we'll hopefully have Guillaume on here to talk more about these ETH proofs and more of that stuff next week. So I'm looking forward to learn more about that. And yeah, remember to go in the stream chat, write your EOS account name to sign up for this pop tokens giveaway, and tune in next week for the monthly raffle. All right, so that's gonna be it for us today. Thanks for joining. Have a good night, and go EOS.
Go EOS.
Go EOS.
Go
EOS.
Oh, EOS.
3, 2, 1, 0, go.
EOS on steroids.
All right, see you later.